welcome to Investment Trends, a program brought to you by the ZDA and ZNBC. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Mary Mwikisa. Now, before a major investment project is approved for investment in Zambia, there is usually an environmental impact assessment carried out to identify, predict, and evaluate the environmental effects of a proposed project. This process is executed by the Zambia Environmental Management Agency, ZEMA, and making them a very important stakeholder in promoting sustainable economic growth and development. In this regard, this week on Investment Trends, we feature ZEMA to just help us understand more about their role in developmental agenda. And in studio, I'm privileged to introduce to you Mr. Maxwell Nkoya, who is Director Operation from the Zambia Environmental Management Agency. Mr. Nkoya, welcome to the program and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Now, I think first things first, I think we all have an idea of what your organization is all about. You safeguard our environment by approving projects in accordance with particular policies. But maybe give us your full mandate as an agency.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Maybe before I answer that question, I want to give the framework of our existence, as it were. Yeah, when you refer to the National Constitution, the Amended Constitution Act number 2 of 2016, among the principles as highlighted in Article 255, it talks about principles that are particularly utilization of natural resources in a sustainable manner. So based on that and other principles that also highlight non-wasteful way of development, the Zambia Environmental Management Agency, which is born from an act of parliament, the Environmental Management Act, number 12 of 2011. So the mandate that has been bestowed on Zambia Environmental Management Agency, or ZEMA, basically looks at two things. The first aspect is a planning side for environmental management, where we look at sustainable utilization of natural resources and then management of the environment. Then since they are economic activities and that entails that as they operate, they will produce byproducts that may affect the environment. That's where the second aspect of our work comes in. It's a pollution control as well as pollution prevention. Now, as I'm saying that, what comes to mind is also what is now the link, why am I here on a ZDA platform?
Exactly.
Yes. From the ZDA Act, Zambia Environmental Management Agency has been identified as one of institutions that should sit on the board. And this is because of sustainable development, as highlighted in the Constitution and also globally. To attain sustainable development, it means that the social aspect, economic aspect, and the environment must work in harmony so that there is no imbalance among these three pillars of sustainable development. So in short, that's the reason why you are also on this program. We sit on the board and we are part of national development as the third arm of sustainable development.
How would you describe the past year in terms of investors that have been knocking on your door?
You see, what has been happening, I think, for the past, in fact, more than 10 years, has reflected in the growth in the GDP. We have been experiencing an increase in clients seeking our services. So the past year was extremely busy and it stretched us, I think, beyond the limits, but we're able to deliver to facilitate. As an arm of the government, we basically have to make sure that once an investor goes to ZDA and they are issued with an investment license, then or permit, then they come to ZEMA now to formalize that investment. So the investment ranges from manufacturing, industry, road development. We can talk about agriculture, fisheries. It's a whole range of economic activities that we basically are attending to. Sure.
Now, you would go into, certain localities in our cities and someone would tell you, oh, I was supposed to have a shopping mall here, but ZEMA stopped it. We were supposed to have this industry here, but ZEMA stopped it. How would you compare first quarter of 2016 and the first quarter of 2017? How did they both fare in contrast?
In contrast, I have some statistics which I would want to refer to highlight basically what I mentioned, that the development has been on an upward swing, and also showing how much we are churning out in terms of facilitating development. In 2016, particularly the first quarter is what I'll talk about, we facilitated a total of 107 projects. Now, before I go maybe into the details, the environmental impact assessment process results in principally two outcomes. The first one is that a project can be approved. Then the second is it can be rejected. Yeah, but in between, in case we do not have sufficient information, we do defer making a decision. So we'll seek more consultation and also find more information or request for more information. Then the two outcomes will ultimately come. So from the 207 that we attended to in 2016, 101 were approved. And then 2 were deferred into the second quarter, and then only 2 were basically rejected, and 1 was withdrawn by the client. Now, head to head with 2017, just this first quarter we attended to 204, so showing almost a double of what we processed in 2016. Then out of those, 137 were approved, and then 58 were deferred, and only 9 rejections. And now, very interestingly, is also the investment that we have facilitated. Just for the first 3 months in the first quarter, we facilitated $1.2 billion US. So those projects which were approved, they are worth, once implemented, that's the investment cost. And these include foreign direct investment as well as our own nationals who are investing, which projects we have to approve.
Okay.
Sure.
That is very interesting. You earlier on mentioned in your preamble the importance of the EIA, and of course that it's a major focus of your organization.
Sure.
But tell us more about it, and of course how this the outcome of the EIA can affect, you know, an investor, for example.
Sure.
Yes.
In a nutshell, the environmental impact assessment, as you rightly mentioned, I was very happy to see you highlighting what basically it is. We basically look at the project. When an investor comes, we work with the Environmental Management Act, as I mentioned. Then we have regulations. That's the environmental impact assessment regulations. These regulations have 2 schedules or list of projects that are mandated to go through the EIA. So once an investor comes, we screen the project, because it's not every project basically that goes through, that is required to go through an EIA. Okay. So once we find that it is listed, or we are certain that its activities are likely to impact on the environment, then we request that the developer goes through an EIA. And from screening, we go into now the scoping. The developer now scopes, meaning it undertakes a study to see what will be affected. And the effect will be both on the 3 aspects, as I mentioned. It may affect the environment, it may affect the social or the economic activities of the particular area, or indeed the country. So once they go through the scoping, they determine what will be the possible impacts, both positive and negative. And that's something interesting, Mary. It's not only the negative that we look at, but we also look at the positives. The positives have to be enhanced so that we maximize on the benefits, while the negative have to be mitigated so that we reduce the adverse impacts. Now, once the study is concluded, and one thing I also want to highlight is highly consultative. The developer has to engage an expert in EIA who will consult people in the vicinity of the project, where the project will be located. And then they also, once they are done, they bring out the report, the EIA report, to us. Then we also circulate 1 to key stakeholders. Now, I'll give you an example, like an energy project. If there is maybe a service station coming up, or fuel storage facilities, or even a refinery, one of the key stakeholders is the Energy Regulation Board. They input into the EIA decision-making process. So they give us the technical aspect of it as well as their views in line with the law they are mandated to enforce. Then we also consult the public from two fronts. One, we hold what is called a public hearing for certain projects where we call people interested and unaffected, and then we get their views. Then the other aspect, you also put up the advert in newspapers, the print media. We are actually mandated to publicize. Without that, then the decision-making process can be annulled. So once all these inputs have come in, plus a scientific study, then ZEMA with the board, our board consists of multiple stakeholders, including those with civil society as well as government agencies, then ministries, and then a decision is made as whether it should be approved or rejected. Now the decision is basically also in the law. The Environmental Management Act, particularly Section 29, stipulates the reasons. If a project has effects that cannot be mitigated, meaning that there is no way of preventing the adverse effects. I will give you an example. Take, for example, here where we are at mass media.
Yes.
If a certain developer came up to say he wants maybe to set up a mine next door, and then it does not provide how it's going to basically mitigate the impact of mining versus a media institution or even a residential area, then it means that their impact will not be sustainable. They will be so adverse that you likely won't even enjoy your work here if they are blasting next door. But there are processes that those are some of the issues we look at, so that there is a win-win situation in the decision making.
I'm glad you said the process is highly consultative.
Sure.
My argument is, you've had projects that you feel this would have really been of benefit to this community, and the local people's lives would have been changed for the better. But then you have ZEMA's report saying otherwise because of the dangers involved in embarking on such a project. How do you strike a balance to ensure that at the same time we don't lose out, of the investment, but at the same time we are safe?
All right. There are many.
Do you consult the community as well?
Yes.
Are they part of the consultation?
Actually, the community are the first to be consulted.
Okay.
First, when the developer comes up, is mandated to go to the community. As I mentioned on the scoping, you identify who will be affected and how they will be affected. Then you also present how it's going to mitigate the adverse effect. So the positive effect of setting up, say, an industry near a certain community is that they will be the first to be considered for employment. But again, take for example, if they need to be relocated to another area, and then the developer does not provide how they are going to be compensated. Because within the Constitution, again, the Constitution protects our right, that we have a right to a clean and safe environment. But if a certain developer cannot guarantee that, then the government, through the Environmental Management Agency, has been mandated to protect the rights of every citizen.
Exactly.
But we do have ways of, you asked me about balancing how do we balance the two aspects. So in case a certain development cannot coexist with a certain community or a certain environmental setting, then within the EIA process there is what we call consideration of alternatives. The alternatives have to look at the technology or even the location. So if take for example industry A is supposed to be located, maybe let's take for example an oil processing plant. You can set it up next to mass media if you are able to mitigate, but the country also has laws or which designate where such activities should take place. We have the industrial area. So if the developer identifies this area and also identify another site in the industrial area, then ZEMA will recommend that they set up. So that is a win-win situation.
That is a win-win situation, and that is what I wanted to hear.
Sure.
Now, if you're just joining us, this is Investment Trends, and of course, this week we are looking at the role of ZEMA in promoting sustainable economic growth and development. And of course, just now we talked to ZEA to learn how the institution collaborates with ZEMA in promoting economic growth and development. Take a look.
collaborate with ZEMA in several ways. Specifically is to facilitate for our investors to get the project brief or environmental impact assessment. And what we do is, it is a requirement in all our letters of approval. We require all investors to comply with the requirement of the ZEMA Act. And as at now, actually, we have already drafted some service level agreement so that we engage with the ZEMA to fast track the clearance of the approved projects by the ZDA. The way we handle ZEMA is the way we handle, for example, immigration issues. We will just recommend as ZDA, and then the government wing must follow their guidelines and procedures. And we have no influence whatsoever. But what we are trying to do, as I said, we have designed service level agreements. We have already written to ZEMA to request for a meeting so that we agree on certain issues in terms of information exchange, in terms of how to process the requirement for the project brief and environmental impact assessments. And once we agree on that, I think it will be okay for our investors because it will be easier for them to get the approvals by ZEMA at least easier. ZEMA sits on our board of directors, and the whole reason why they sit on the board of directors is to facilitate the projects that require project briefs and environmental impact assessments. Mind you, it's not every project that requires the impact assessment. So it is the ZEMA who will assess the project. The investment certificate is a facilitating document. So ours comes first before the ZEMA. And the ZDA Act requires us to facilitate for our investors who are registered with us to get secondary licenses, one of which is the ZEMA license.
Wow, great collaborations there, and indeed it is interesting to find out how ZDA is working with ZEMA, and of course to making sure that the country has investments that are compliant to environment regulations. This is Investment Trends. We continue with our discussion, and I'm joined in studio by Mr. Maxwell Nkoya, who is Director Operations from ZEMA. Welcome back to our program.
Thank you, Mary.
All right.
Sure.
Now, just before the clip, we were talking about the importance of the EIA. I know there are projects that you're working on currently. Would you like to highlight some?
It's been an exciting period. One of the interesting one that come to mind is a rail project.
Okay.
The government, through the means of communication, will be setting up a rail from Chipata through Petaoke to Serenje.
Okay.
That has been an exciting project because in the life of the institution, ZEMA, we've not facilitated an EIA dealing with basically a rail project. So it has been a learning curve, and also interesting to see how we can also facilitate the ease of transport. Other projects that are interesting have to do with aquaculture. You've heard even His Excellency encouraging us to diversify.
Yes.
So basically the fisheries industry is also on the increase. But the waters are also a sensitive place to undertake activities because they are very fluid, and we may not necessarily be able to predict to the minutest detail what is happening. So such projects are also helping us to sharpen our skills and also ensure that we facilitate such projects. There have also been, you asked about the shopping malls.
Yes.
I think we have seen an upswing of shopping malls. But now with respect to shopping malls, we also have to balance between basically what they are intended to facilitate, to provide, and where they are located. Because as we look at the location, we consult also the Road Safety Agency and RDA. Because if these factors are not taken into place, we find that congestion is building up, and then you can't get to a point A in time, and that has an impact on our expenditure and also our economy. So we consult stakeholders in that.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Now, what is the procedure of getting a ZEMA approval for an investment, and how would you, what kind of investment do you give an EIA certificate?
All right, the EIA procedure, basically the client, once they present to us what the project is all about, and then they undertake the full study, they present it to us, then we, as I mentioned, we consult. Once the consultation is concluded, then we issue a decision. There are also fees, statutory fees that are supposed to be paid, and these fees, basically we collect that revenue on behalf of the government. We basically remit to Central Treasury. So once the decision is made, they get what is called a decision letter. A decision letter from the environmental law side is a form of a permit. It will allow, take for example, like I can see in the background, you have the Mamba Korali and the thermal plant. So we issue them with a decision letter, and then it stipulates conditions of how they are supposed to operate. Both from, we start from the construction phase, operation, and then until the project concludes, what we call decommissioning. So the EIA process basically results in a decision letter, which is a permit with conditions.
Sure. Now, what are the compliance levels? Do you have a deliberate policy of having random checks on seeing who is complying with the rules and regulations, and what happens to those found wanting?
All right, the law as it is there to help facilitate sustainable development, as I mentioned. However, after we issue the decision letter, we are mandated to check. So we do spot checks on facilities that have been basically been permitted to proceed. In terms of the compliance levels, I can report to say that the compliance levels have been increasing. Yeah, we're coming from a level where we were below 50%, but now the compliance level have really been basically improving. And this can also be attributed to awareness, as well as the new law we are operating on. If you remember way back from 1992, this institution was known as ECZ, Environmental Council of Zambia. So in 2011, there was a new act. The new act has punitive measures which are deterrent enough. Take, for example, if someone implements a project without basically complying with the law, that kind of offense is a criminal offense, and it goes through the courts of law. And the maximum penalty that one can pay is, in terms of penalty units, is 700,000 penalty units, which translates to about 210,000 kwacha. Yeah.
Now, as we end the program, what is your final words to investors and would-be investors?
My final word is first maybe to commend ZEA for this platform, which is helping everyone, both from the international scene and local, to realize that to achieve sustainable development, the three pillars of sustainable development, social, economic, and environment, have to be balanced. And then for the developers, it's always an advantage to comply. Why do I say this? Because once someone does not comply with the EIA process, they will not get what we call, from the environment side and social, is called a social license to exist. If they go into a certain community which they did not consult, it means that they will not be received. And you can imagine the impact on their investment. Then the other aspect is also to avoid litigation, because non-compliance to law result into lawsuits, which are not good for any one of us. On our part, we would love that we don't spend time in court. So we want the developers to comply outrightly, and then we'll facilitate their development.
Ms. Ankoya, thank you very much.
So it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, this has been Investment Trends, and of course I was talking to Mr. Maxwell Nkoya, who is Director of Operations at the Zambia Environmental Management Agency, just to make us understand how ZEMA collaborates with the Zambia Development Agency, and of course advance investments, and which ultimately results in national development. Thank you so much for watching. Until next week, goodbye and stay safe.